Hi, my name is Shelley Marie, and I'm going to be doing some testing of the Genesis heat set paints here. We've had a few concerns from time to time that they're not able to get the Genesis to adhere to some vinyls, so I thought I'd show you here how to test the paints to see if it is the paint's actual problem. So I have a canvas here, and I am using a canvas because it is a neutral background. There's not going to be any chemical reactions when the paint is heated onto the canvas. So this is what we call a neutral testing base. So I'm going to be testing today the ultramarine. This is the concern we had just recently, and this is the dye lot that they were concerned about. So I have some dye lots and some different ultramarine blues here that I'm going to be testing just to show you if there's any difference. And you'll see me here, I'm going to be stirring them and applying them as the codes state on to the canvas. I also have a little bit of red down at the bottom there I'm going to test just to have a different color here for comparison as well. So I'm going to probably just fast forward the application process here. You'll be seeing that I am not applying any thinners whatsoever. This is just the paint we are testing on a neutral background. And each of the paint jars will have a very clean brush that we will be using, so it will not contaminate the next pot as we're testing it going through. And you'll also notice that on one of my testings, I have an original Genesis, what they call the blister packets up there in the corner, that we will be also using to show you that way back in 1995, what the paint was doing back then as well, to see if there's any difference with the newer paints that are being produced today. So just bear with me, and we'll fast forward this just as you see me apply, and then we'll come back and we'll do the testing once it's heat. Okay, I'm going to mention here that I have a oven that is preheated to 270 degrees Fahrenheit. I use 270 to ensure that the 265 is achieved in order for the paint to cure. So I don't need to go any higher than 270. Higher heat doesn't help at all with this paint. It needs 265, and 270 will get you there. Okay, so we're back from heating the canvas, and we're going to do the test just with a Q-tip here. I'm going to bring it up a little bit closer. So the original here, I'll test it first, and you'll hear the Q-tip scrape across the canvas to tell you that I've actually got some pressure on there and not just wiping it lightly over it. So here we go. And there is absolutely no residue as I expected. And I'll just do a quick once all over. Okay, so over here we'll go to the ultramarine blue that didn't have a number with it, but it was part of our series here at McPherson's. So we'll give it a scrape. Okay, there is no residue on it at all. Okay, and as you're seeing, no residue. Okay, so I'm going to use a new Q-tip here. I'm going to go to the series 81920. That was the paint that was sent out and wasn't adhering to the vinyl. There is no residue on there. And again. There is no residue. So this was another one. I'll use a new Q-tip here again. That was in a jar here in the studio. Don't know when it was, but it had a different serial number. So we'll give it a try. And again, I'm not seeing any residue there. Okay, and then we had the reds down here just as a control. There's nothing on there. Let me get a new one here. And this one was out of the old original package. And I don't have really anything on there to speak of. Okay, so there's our testing that is finished. This tells me that the heat set is working in the paints, so therefore it is not the paint in itself. But I do have a few recommendations as to what we can try to make it work better on the vinyl. So what I've got here is a sealant I'm going to be using onto the vinyl. It's a softer vinyl again. This is this is the arm of the Lauren that I'm working on. And what I did was I did about half satin, half matte, and added just a few drops of the solvent. The solvent I use is the Museum brand here. And then I just mix it, and as you well know with the Genesis products, the more you stir, the more thin it becomes until you get a really nice thin consistency. This is kind of just left over from the other piece I did. And then I'm going to brush it on, very thin layer to begin with. And once I get it about halfway down the arm, I will then take my clean sponge and I'll move and pat as I go. This gives a nice tooth that I'm looking for, so that the paints and some dust there. There we go, get it off. I haven't cleaned my area for a while, so you'll have to excuse the errors I'm making. Doing this quite quickly on the demand, as they say. So I'm just making sure that I do the fingertips there too, because those are the most important areas. That's where paint usually lifts the most. It doesn't matter what paint you're using. If you don't have a sealer or something of a tooth that's there, or a primer, it will lift because it's so shiny up in those areas from the molds. There's nothing to grab that paint with. So that's why I make sure that I do and the other thing I like about the sealer is if you happen to have any pinholes that you don't see at this point, your sealer will usually fill in those little pinholes, and therefore you won't get that jagged effect of the paint if you fill the pinholes in first with a sealer. It dries clear, so you don't have to worry about it. So I'll continue with that, and then what I do is I let it dry to the touch and with the air, and then I'll put it into my oven. There is no difference in the oven temperature. It's at 265. You can go to 270, but please don't put it on any more than 270 because you will have the vinyls will start reacting with oils lifting out. So if you're finding that the stuff isn't sealing, it's a timing issue, not a heat issue, unless your oven isn't heating up to the temperature of 265. So I'll let that go by. And what I wanted to show you was, we'll go back to the leg here that I did previously. It has air dried. It doesn't have the sealer on top of it, or underneath it, rather. Because we're doing a little bit of an experiment in this test piece. So we're going to put it to the side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the leg that I sealed already, and we're going to put that blue wash onto it. So I have the 2 feet here of Lore. The one on the bottom here is the one that I had put the ultramarine blue wash on, and it's just been air dried right now. And what I'm going to do is, if you see there's a few little pigment dots in there, I'm going to pick them out with a toothpick before I heat set it. But I just wanted to show you this leg up here we haven't done anything with, except for I have put a sealer on it, and it was the matte and satin sealer, and I've labeled it as well to identify it, because now I'm going to put the ultramarine blue wash on this leg with the sealer, and we're going to compare it with the one without the sealer, and we'll go from there. So for this test, I've got my ultramarine blue again, same ultramarine blue with the same dye lot here. So we're going to take the wash, same as I did before, give it a wash, do half a leg at a time. Then I take a sponge and just pounce it on, get all the drips off. I'll work at the creases after I get the drippy stuff off here first. Okay, creases, I'm just, again, just using the very tip of the wedge, going into the crease areas where I don't really want it to be too dark in there. And especially you see in between the foot there, and sometimes if you have trouble with that, you're just going to have to get either a tiny mop or a brush and just put it right in between the toes there where it was puddled, and get that puddle out of there. You can also use a mop if you want on your creases to get the puddles out of those as well, and wipe them out. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the rest of the leg here, and then I'll do the same. I will air dry it first, so and check for drips or little paint pigments. Pounce, 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 pounce. Drips. Use the edge of the wedge. Any other, try not to get fingerprints on either. Okay, so I'm going to leave this one now dry, air dry, and then I'll come back and see if there's anything I need to fix up on it as well. I can see there's some puddling happening in here. I'm probably going to have to wipe out as we leave it air dry. Okay, so we're back here from baking, and I have the 2 limbs that were put in the oven at 265 to 270, and they were baked for 9 minutes. So we're going to give them a test here. The one had the matte varnish on, remember? Oh, I got a piece of sponge in there. That was just carrying it from one room to the other, so I'll take it out there. And the other leg did not have a matte varnish on it. We put the ultramarine blue straight onto the vinyl. So what we're going to do now is just take a sponge, and we'll give it a good rub and see if we have any residue that comes off here. Okay, you can see that there is just a slight, I'm rubbing pretty hard here, and the vinyl is cold, so there's no warmth to that vinyl, and you can see there is a very slight residue coming off there, so it is lifting. Now the other leg here, we're going to give another good rub all over, just trying to pick up any areas that may lift, and on the bottom of the feet as well. And as you can see, the one that had the matte varnish primer on it really doesn't have any residue whatsoever coming off there. Hi, so I'm back here, and I've got the 2 we were testing out the blue, and I just continued on with the primary method using my blue, my yellow, and my reds, and I've stopped and started into some detail here. So I thought I'd do a test with some I didn't have any problem, I should say, as I went through. What I did do is the leg that here that doesn't have the label on. Remember, I didn't put a base coat of the matte Genesis on there. So after we found out that it was leaving some residue, I did cover over top of the blue and then continued on with my primary method here. So just to point out, there is the difference of the two lakes that we were testing. So with the one that I sealed over top of the blue, I'm just going to take some of the solvent at this point and see if anything is coming off. I didn't have any problem when I was doing the primary method. In fact, my sponge is the red, yellow, and blue there. I just wanted to show you I was using. The yellow is still very, very yellow. My reds are very red. They're not contaminated, and this is one of the blues I was using. So I didn't find any cross-contamination happening as I was pouncing them, but I did not rub them at the same time. So I just continued on as I normally would, except with a pouncing method. So here we are. Again, I'm going to say we're going to test some Mona Lisa for solvent on here. Amanda had sent this along with her samples that she was testing on, and I really like this container, Amanda. I'd really like to know where you got that from. So anyways, I'm going to take a Q-tip here, and I'm just going to dip it into her Mona Lisa. And I'm going to do a test on the bottom. This is the leg that I just sealed over top of the blue. That's all. There's no sealer on top of the rest of the paint. And I'm going to just try the bottom of the feet, because I find if it's going to lift, it's at least an area I can fix later on. So I'm going to find there's blue in this area here. So I'm going to put some of that on there and rub it. And as you see, I'm not seeing anything lifting here. And then what I should do is go for the other end. I'll take some more Mona Lisa solvent here, and I'll go over top of a deeper red here part. And I'm pointing it out here, and I'm not seeing any lifting there. I'll try a little crease here, a little deeper in the color. And no, I'm not seeing anything lifting here. So Amanda, your solvent is fine. I was using the museum brand, but the two are very compatible. I don't see any difference between the two solvents. So I don't think it is your solvent at all. I can take a clean sponge here, and I can give it a wipe, which I'm going to do anyways because I've got some solvent on there. And you can see on the sponge that there's no residue coming off. So as far as I'm concerned, the paint is cured on there, but I also do put a coat. When I'm all done here, I've still got some details to go. I will put a coat of the matte varnish or satin varnish on top of that with the Genesis heat set. And I do that with all my dolls, and that'll seal everything in as well to give it a good protection. So I hope that helps you a bit, Amanda. I'm not sure what else to advise. As I said earlier in the video, maybe someone else has some little secrets they'd like to share with you with using the Genesis on some of the softer vinyls. Okay, so this is the leg that Amanda had sent back, and she had done her testing here, and it has been sitting for quite a while. So I just thought I'd, just for the fun of it, see if I could get any residue to come off any of these, because it's been packaged and in the mail, and now there is a little bit of residue that is coming off. This is a very, very soft, what I call a very soft vinyl. You'll have to ask her as to what kind of vinyl it is. I'm not sure. I do know that as it gets baked, the more you see how it really does melt quite quickly in the ovens there. And no paint would stick on that vinyl with it melted like that. That's like glass. Okay, so her other here, we were going to take another, not sure which testing she was doing, but there is a slight residue on that one. So she'll have to talk to you as to how much residue she got off. I'm thinking the more it sits on the vinyl, it's probably going to seep in there. But it does leave just a slight. Now that one doesn't at all. I'm rubbing it quite a lot, and there's no residue on that third one. So I was just very curious. Over here, what I did was I applied a primer, just our Reborn FX primer down, and I decided to see if the paint, which she was using, the 81920 series, and I put it on top to see if I could get, find a cleaner, there we go, get a residue coming off of it after I baked. Now that the Reborn FX primer is a air dry, and it is left on overnight, and I just thought it might stop some of the oils if that is really what is releasing your paints. And it looks like I'm rubbing really hard here, giving it a good scrub, and I can't see anything I really can state that is there. But that might be one solution you may want to try, is give your vinyl a primer on it. As I said, I use the air dry on this one, but I do know that I use the matte Genesis a lot of times to seal my vinyl off first, and it does help the paint to stick to the vinyl as well. So that might be something you want to try. Each of the different vinyls reacted differently. I had done many tests here with all the paints since this has come in, and you can see all the labeling here. And I mean, some of them did leave a residue off, and some of them just soaked in. Some of them, after a while of just sitting, they didn't leave a residue at all the next day. They did just the prior day. So that's telling me that it's actually saturated into the vinyl. Now all of this is vinyl that has not been prepped. It's just paint straight right onto the vinyls, but they're different kinds of vinyls. So as I was finding out, it all depends on the vinyls as to whether or not these paints are releasing, and that's my assumption with this. There's one here we had, that was the ultramarine blue. It was out of one of the petite jars, and you can see that it has come off, but this is one of these really soft vinyls. So if you pick up one of the harder ones, this is a harder one. It's not soft and it's not real hard. So if I pick that up and let's get a clean one here, and I go like this and rub across, there's basically no residue there. It's just, it's going to all depend on what you're applying the paint on. The other thing is you could try sealing over top of it. Once you have your, if you're doing really thin wash layers, maybe afterwards put a bit of a sealer on top. Say, try the, I know some people don't like the matte. Definitely don't use the thinning medium, because all you're doing is you're going to release the paint through thinning the pigment. That's what the thinner does. So use a satin perhaps, or a satin matte mixture, and seal over top. The other thing is just wait a day or two if you want, and see if it soaks into the vinyl for you if you're having trouble with the vinyl. Those are the only suggestions I'm going to have for you, but other than that, I think we're going to have some people just try different things out and let us know what works for them. Thank you.